Hi, it's Katrina. The black-maned lion. In recent years, images of a completely black, so-called melanistic lion have circulated online. While many of these photos prove to be photoshopped hoaxes, there is such a thing as a dark-maned lion. In early 2017, a National Geographic explorer and ornithologist named Sagan Sekirsioglu spotted a rare dark-maned Ethiopian lion. This population is one of few who live in a habitat outside the sub-Saharan savanna, where most African lions are found. The Ethiopian lion was thought to be extinct, but a population of about 40 were rediscovered in 2016. Scientists are unsure whether this little-studied group might be their own subspecies of lion. Lions in general are endangered, despite how often they seem to appear in images and video footage. Worldwide, their population has declined by as much as 75% since 1980, with less than 20,000 lions likely remaining in the wild, according to National Geographic. An all-black or melanistic lion could theoretically exist, and there are a couple of stories of sightings of black lions, although there are so few that seeing one is like finding a unicorn. An almost entirely black lion was spotted in Tanzania, and in 2008, large black lions were rumored to be in the streets in South Africa. Remote populations of the black-maned lion are also very rare, and researchers are hoping to learn more about their genetics and how they are related to other African lions. So far, they believe that Ethiopian lions are an isolated, genetically distinct population. Locals say that the lions tend to stay in one place, so they are pretty isolated, but that doesn't mean that they are protected. The vaquita. The critically endangered Vaquita porpoise is the world's rarest marine mammal, with an estimated 10 remaining in the wild. These tiny porpoises, who reach 5 feet long and weigh up to 120 pounds, are only found in Mexico's Gulf of California. They are found primarily in the region's shallow coastal waters, but with how close the species is to the brink of extinction, seeing one is extremely unlikely. Mexico's illegal fishing industry is largely responsible for the vaquita's alarmingly small numbers, with the cetaceans being entangled in nets as bycatch by fishermen pursuing totoaba fish, an activity that was banned in 1975. The last vaquita spotted died in a fishing net in March 2020. Activists accuse the Mexican government of failing to take action against illegal fishing. In 2020, the Center for Biological Diversity and Animal Welfare Institute sued the Trump administration in an effort to pressure the American government to sanction Mexico for its illegal fishing activities. The conservation groups hoped that this would in turn prompt the Mexican government to enforce its fishing laws, but nothing seems to have changed so far. Even though what they are doing is against the law, fishermen in the Gulf of California are becoming increasingly brazen in their harassment of conservationists working to protect the vaquita, including the organization Sea Shepherd, which confiscates illegal gill nets in the region. Recently, some fishermen rammed their small boat into a Sea Shepherd vessel, and others nearby allegedly threw gasoline bombs and lead weights at the ship while it removed gill nets from the water. 2 people were injured in the ordeal. Incidents like this make it clear that in addition to pushing vaquitas even closer to extinction, preventing illegal fishing and protecting wildlife is dangerous business. The Seneca white deer. The world's largest all-white population of white-tailed deer can be found at the former Seneca Army Depot in Romulus, New York, in the Finger Lakes region. They share the area with brown white-tailed deer and frequently interbreed. While the species is typically brown in color, the white deer are leucistic, meaning that they carry a recessive genetic trait that causes them to lack the pigment in their hair, hence their white coats. Unlike albino animals, which completely lack the pigment melanin, leucistic deer do not entirely lack pigment. They have normal eyes and eyesight, sparing them from the vision problems that come along with albinism. In an unprotected environment, white deer tend to be a prime target for predators and hunters. But the Seneca white deer population is carefully managed, and their numbers have increased for over 60 years, according to the Seneca white deer official website. The deer's territory is on privately owned property that the U.S. Army used for storing weapons and ammunition between World War II and the year 2000. When the Army built a fence around the depot in 1941, it's likely that several of the white deer were unintentionally confined within. This is usually not good for wildlife, but in this case, the rare deer were isolated from predators and thus able to thrive. After the first white deer was spotted in 1949, the Army began protecting them. To keep the deer population from getting too big for the amount of space that the base offered, the military allowed people to hunt the brown white-tailed deer, but not the white ones. The base opened up for self-guided auto tours in 2019, but the program unfortunately ended due to financial struggles, decreasing the chances of members of the public encountering one of these majestic white deer. The hooded grebe. The hooded grebe is famous for its bizarre mating display. Discovered in the 70s, these rare birds are found in Patagonia, Argentina, and possibly Chile. Its elaborate courtship moves include fancy footwork and dancing cheek to cheek, and then whipping their heads around. A group of naturalists and filmmakers called Living Wild in South America produced a film called Tango in the Wind that shows a rare look at this bird's courtship display. There are fewer than 500 breeding pairs remaining, and the future doesn't look good. Its population was once much larger and has declined by as much as 95% in some places. Climate change has affected the lakes where they nest, causing them to dry up. Besides using the lakes to breed, the bird's main food source, the milfoil plant, grows in these waters and is consequently becoming less available. Additionally, the species has a low reproduction rate, producing one chick each breeding season on average. As if this and climate change weren't damaging enough to the hooded grebe, invasive species like American mink and kelp gulls prey on the bird, sometimes killing several in a day. Thanks to diligent conservation actions, the hooded grebe population has been stabilizing since 2014, and its reproductive rate appears to be slowly increasing. In any case, very few people have ever seen this bird, and probably never will. The Liger. There is a growing list of captively bred lion-tiger hybrids, including Ligers, the offspring of a male lion and female tiger, Tigons, the offspring of a lioness and a male tiger, and Litigons, a hybrid between a female tigon and a male Asiatic lion, just to name a few. The list gets progressively more confusing as it goes on. One of the rarest among these already rare creatures is the Liger. A Liger is the offspring of a male tiger and a female liger, making it 75% tiger and 25% lion. There are only 6 known Ligers in the world, according to the Barry Kirshner Wildlife Foundation, a nonprofit that houses a female Liger named Topaz. The organization hopes to learn more about this extremely rare and therefore little understood animal by observing Topaz as she grows up. Its website notes that researchers do not believe Ligers are prone to the same inherited birth defects and neurological problems as ligers, despite having one as a parent. While Liger cubs tend to be larger than the average tiger cub, it is unknown whether they inherit a growth inhibitor gene like ligers, who reach massive sizes and grow continuously throughout their lives as a result. If the human-made species is lucky enough to escape these issues, its population may increase. But for now, the only way to see one up close is to travel to one of the mere handful of places throughout the globe that house a Liger. Yangtze finless porpoise. The Yangtze finless porpoise is endemic to the Yangtze River, Asia's longest river, and 2 lakes that the river connects to. It's one of 2 dolphin species native to the river, with the other being the Chinese river dolphin. Unfortunately, the river dolphin was declared functionally extinct in 2006 as the first dolphin species to be wiped out by human activity, leaving the Yangtze finless porpoise as the river's sole surviving dolphin. Nicknamed the Smiling Angel for its cute natural facial expression, the Yangtze finless porpoise is also known for its small size, reaching up to 6.2 feet long. It plays a crucial role in balancing the food chain in its habitat because it helps to regulate the populations of fish and other creatures that it eats. The species is highly protected as part of an effort to avoid the same fate as the Baiji dolphin. Currently, the population numbers between 1,000 and 1,800, classifying the species as critically endangered. Sightings of these unique creatures are on the rise, but are still relatively infrequent. The future is looking up though, and people are spotting the Yangtze finless porpoise more often. There is now an annual photography contest in the species' honor. The most recent contest, which announced its winner in December 2019, received hundreds of entries over the course of just a month from expert and amateur photographers alike, serving as a hopeful sign for the dolphin's future. Saola. The name Saola means spindle horns in Vietnamese. Nicknamed the Asian unicorn, these horned creatures are related to cattle and buffalo, but more closely resemble antelope. Both males and females have 2 parallel, straight horns on their head, measuring up to 20 inches long. Saolas grow up to 33 inches tall at the shoulder, with adults typically weighing between 176 and 220 pounds. They are the only known species of their genus. Scientists discovered the Saola in 1992 in north-central Vietnam during a survey conducted jointly by the country's Ministry of Forestry and the World Wildlife Fund. They found evidence of the animal in the form of a horned skull, making the Saola the first large mammal discovery in over a half-century. The species only lives in the Annamite Mountains of Vietnam and Laos, and is so rarely seen it has only been scientifically documented in the wild 4 times, and none exist in captivity. The Saola's population numbers are unknown, but it is classified as critically endangered. Hunting is the primary threat to its existence. Numerous organizations and agencies are working together to try saving this elusive creature. In late 2019, the Vietnamese government established the Dong Chau Ke Nuoc Trong Nature Reserve, which encompasses an area containing some of the world's most critically endangered species, including part of the Annamite Mountains. The reserve is afforded the highest protection status, banning the extraction of natural resources and not even allowing tourists in certain areas. Conservationists hope that these newly implemented measures will help bring threatened animals back from the brink of extinction, including the Saola. The Philippine Eagle. Formerly known as the monkey-eating eagle, the Philippine eagle is endemic to the Philippines, hence its current name, and is only found on 4 islands out of the 7,000 that make up the country. As one of the world's most powerful and majestic birds of prey, it uses its strong beak to kill and eat monkeys, snakes, lizards, and even pigs. Adults typically grow between 2.5 and 3.3 feet long, with a wingspan of up to 6.5 feet. Despite its strength, the species is rapidly declining. Over the last 40 years or so, deforestation, habitat loss and fragmentation, mining, unregulated hunting, pesticide use, and natural disasters such as typhoons have reduced the surviving population of Philippine eagles to 300 or less, making them one of the world's rarest birds. In 1995, the species was named the national bird of the Philippines. This recognition has helped to raise awareness of the bird and the struggles it faces. Efforts to bring the Philippine eagle population back from the brink of extinction are ongoing, but its future remains uncertain. Hispaniolan Solenodon. The Hispaniolan Solenodon is what's known as a living fossil, meaning it has existed for a very long time. It's one of the last surviving members of an ancient lineage of shrews that sprang into existence around 76 million years ago and lived alongside the dinosaurs. The tiny animal, which measures between 11 and 15 inches long and weighs around 2.2 pounds on average, is one of few surviving venomous mammal species. It injects its toxic saliva into its prey via specialized grooves in its incisors, hence the name Solenodon, which means slotted tooth. This ability may have been inherited from ancient mammals. The species once thrived on the island of Hispaniola, which includes modern-day Haiti and the Dominican Republic. It is found nowhere else on Earth, only occupying a small 38.6 square mile area in Haiti and a portion of the southern side of the island in the Dominican Republic. The two populations may represent distinct subspecies. The Hispaniolan Solenodon has a low reproduction rate to begin with, birthing just 2 litters of 1 to 3 offspring annually. Additionally, European colonization had a majorly detrimental effect on the population, mainly through the introduction of invasive species into the environment, such as rats, mongoose, feral cats, dogs, and other predators. Researchers are unsure of how many are left, but it is considered critically endangered. In addition to being highly threatened and only found on 1 island throughout the world, the Hispaniolan Solenodon is nocturnal and spends its days sheltering in logs and crevices. Simply put, to see one, you truly need to be in the right place at the right time, and probably looking for it. Jade Maya Pendant. In 2015, archaeologists working in the somewhat remote region of Nimli Punit in southern Belize discovered a large T-shaped jade pendant containing mysterious carved hieroglyphs. It's the second largest jade Maya artifact ever found in the country, measuring 7.4 inches wide, 4.1 inches high, and 0.3 inches thick. Kings wore pendants like this during important ceremonies and were often buried with them. But this pendant was found with just a few teeth among the remains of a palace in an area known to contain few Maya artifacts. It dates back to around 800 AD and was found amid a collection of other objects, including pottery and a stone sculpture of a deity. It was like finding the Hope Diamond in Peoria instead of New York, lead researcher Geoffrey Braswell said of the discovery. We would expect something like it in one of the big cities of the Maya world. Instead, here it was, far from the center. Even more impressively, the pendant is the first artifact of its type bearing historical inscriptions. The etchings have not been fully deciphered, but they date the pendant back to the year 672 and tell the story of the leader who wore the piece, King Janab ol Kiinich. Furthermore, the text explains that he was from a city in modern-day Belize located a 5-hour drive from where the pendant was found. Prior to the discovery, researchers had not really thought about the sites being connected, since they are separated by thick forest and a mountain range. Braswell believes that a new dynasty was founded at Nimli Punit around the time the pendant was used. Any glory it may have had was short-lived, however. Around 800 AD, the Maya civilization collapsed throughout Belize and Guatemala, and Nimli Punit was abandoned within a decade of the pendant's burial. The reasons for the widespread desertion of Maya kingdoms in the region are just as much of a mystery as the pendant itself. It's possible that climate change caused crops to die out, causing the civilization to perish. But all experts can do for now is speculate as they continue to search for an explanation. The Guide to the Underworld. In late 2019, archaeologists uncovered the oldest known copy of the Book of Two Ways, an ancient Egyptian guide and map of the underworld. It is so old it is a precursor to the Book of the Dead. The book details the ancient Egyptian underworld and the two paths to Rostau, the glorious realm of Osiris, the god of death. The two ways refers to taking the path over land or the path over water that are separated by a lake of fire. Experts believe that it may be the first illustrated book in history, and the recently discovered copy dates back an estimated 4,000 years. Smithsonian Magazine reports that the newest, or technically oldest, copy of the Book of Two Ways joins just 24 others known to modern archaeologists. A paper published in the Journal of Egyptian Archaeology describes the recently discovered book, which predates the other copies by roughly 40 years. Overlooked by grave robbers and previous archaeologists, it was discovered in 2012 in a coffin during excavations of a burial shaft in the town of Deir al-Barsha. The inscriptions, which were written inside of the sarcophagus of a high-status woman named Ankh, and other artifacts in the grave, date back to the reign of Pharaoh Mentuhotep II, who ruled until around 2010 BC. Despite its well-documented history, researchers struggle to understand many elements of the Book of Two Ways. The text was a common fixture in Egyptian graves, and the text describes demons, spirits, and fire that can be overcome only by special spells. The maps in the book are full of strange figures and symbols that have been very difficult to understand. There are also special rituals described in the book, probably meant to bring back deceased gods or humans from the dead. Death was life, and rebirth made you closer to Osiris himself. Ask and you shall receive. Wanted to give a big shout out to Hamza Qureshi and OCD Gamers. Thanks so much for supporting this channel. If you are new here, be sure to subscribe and join the Origins Explained family. Out-of-place footprints. While examining the ancient footprints of extinct elephants, camels, buffalo, and horses in the preserved sediment of an ancient lakebed in the Nefud Desert in northern Saudi Arabia, archaeologists spotted 7 human-like prints that they later determined date back between 112,000 and 121,000 years ago. The fascinating find quite possibly qualifies as the oldest evidence of Homo sapiens on the Arabian Peninsula. Discoveries like this challenge and complicate the long-standing belief that early humans first migrated out of Africa en masse around 60,000 years ago, by suggesting that at least some people left thousands of years earlier. At the time humans crossed through, the now arid desert was wetter and greener, much like the modern-day African savanna. No tools were found at the site, indicating that people only stopped briefly while passing through the region. It's admittedly possible that the footprints were left behind by Neanderthals, but a study concluded that they were more likely humans, who were taller and lighter. Plus, the timing of the footprints does not align with Neanderthals' entry into the region with cooler conditions. This and other recent discoveries just proves that scientists still have a lot to learn when it comes to understanding our human past. And we are pretty complicated. Sunken Spanish galleon in Australia. Shipwreck hunter and documentary maker Ben Kropp, who has discovered over 100 wrecks throughout his career, is determined to prove that the Spanish arrived in Australia over a century before Captain James Cook reached the East Coast in 1770. In April, the 84-year-old launched an expedition in search for a sunken Spanish galleon and 17th century gold mining settlement that he believes existed in far northern Queensland. Based on clues he found using ancient maps, hidden clues, historical research, and legends, Kropp believes that King Philip IV of Spain dispatched 3 expeditions to the region in search of gold during the 1640s. He He cites Spain's contentious relationship with Great Britain during the 16th century as probable cause for the mission, theorizing that the Spanish sent explorers to find gold to finance the rebuilding of the Armada naval fleet that was destroyed in 1588. Consequently, according to Kropp, at least one ship wound up in what is now the small town of Bamanga on the northern tip of Cape York. Furthermore, he believes that the ship's crew probably engraved a rock with the year and the vessel's name in accordance with the traditions of the time. Perhaps they found gold, mined it, and left, burying whatever temporary settlements they had built before setting off for Spain. Along the way, the ship allegedly met some destructive fate, with its crew and loot never to be seen again. Kropp believes that the sunken remains of the speculative vessel are out there waiting to be discovered. He is also searching for other artifacts that may help prove his seemingly far-flung theory, including the engraved stone and a cannon he heard about but has not found after 8 years of looking. Unfortunately, it seems as though Kropp has more leads than actual finds, and that his tireless efforts have proven fruitless thus far. Nevertheless, he is determined to prove that his suspicions are correct. Viking DNA. Much of what experts thought they knew about the ethnicity of Vikings was upended in September 2020, when researchers sequenced the genomes of 442 men, women, and children from archaeological sites throughout Europe and Greenland as part of the largest ever Viking DNA study. The team also analyzed the genetic information of 3,855 individuals who currently live in places with known Viking contact, including Denmark, Sweden, and the UK. To the researchers' surprise, it appears as though Vikings interbred pretty regularly with the populations they encountered. Lead study author Eski Willerslev said, "We found genetic differences between different Viking populations within Scandinavia, which shows Viking groups in the region were far more isolated than previously believed." The evidence shows a pattern of DNA traveling northward to Scandinavia from southern Europe and Asia prior to the Viking Age. In fact, some of the Vikings were genetically not Scandinavian at all, with one individual turning out to be from the Pict ancient warrior culture. Simply put, this means that the Vikings' DNA, culture, and customs likely had more complex roots than experts previously believed. The study, like many, led to more questions that researchers must now focus on answering, including who the Vikings actually were. Strange tomb inscription. Israel's Beit Guvrin Maresha National Park is home to 2 ancient excavated cities situated in the Judean foothills in an area known as the Land of 1,000 Caves. Both were founded in the 3rd century and served as diverse multicultural hubs, owing to their placement along trade routes. Excavations at the site began in the early 20th century and resumed during the 1980s and 90s, and its biggest mystery is also its oldest. In 1902, a pair of explorers named John Peters and Herman Thiersch found a remarkable cave tomb containing burial alcoves and a collection of Greek inscriptions and graffiti. Named the Sidonian Cave or Apollophanes Cave, it's Israel's only known painted cave from the Hellenistic period. Most of its inscriptions are the names of the dead, along with some ominous statements like, "This is also taken," and "Do not disturb the girl," and the alcoves are surrounded by paintings of animals and mythical creatures. But one etching above a painting of the multi-headed dog Cerberus leaves experts baffled to this day, stating, "There is nothing left I could do for you or anything that will give you pleasure. I lay with another, but I love you, the one most dear to me. In the name of Aphrodite, I am glad of one thing, that I have your coat for collateral. But I flee and leave you to your freedom. Do as you will, do not bang on the wall, the noise is heard inside. We will signal each other with movements. Let this be our signal." Peters and Thiersch believed that the message was between 2 lovers. Others have suggested that the cryptic carving was a playful love poem or a message from a prostitute to her client warning him to pay up. In any case, would you want that on your tombstone? Of course, the messages are part of the intrigue. What do you think it means? Let us know in the comments below. Cave tools. Earlier this year, an international research team led by Paleolithic archaeologist Dr. Jonathan Hawes revealed the discovery of ancient stone tools in Lapa do Picareiro, a cave near central Portugal's Atlantic coast. These tools indicate that modern humans arrived in westernmost Europe 5,000 years earlier than experts previously thought, rewriting the history of the settlement of Europe. Found at the site were stone tools made by modern humans called Aurignacian tools. They are shaped and carved into rudimentary blades. The artifacts, which are similar to discoveries at other sites across Eurasia and the Russian plain, date back to a time when scientists thought Neanderthals inhabited westernmost Europe, complicating their understanding of the interactions between the two hominids. What was it like when modern humans came together with Neanderthals? Did they take over? Did they mix? This is a long-standing unsolved issue. Based on some people's DNA, it looks like they sometimes assimilated and had children, but it was not the norm. Our ancestors and Neanderthals, for the most part, remained separate. How do researchers know that? Neanderthals never adopted this stone technology. It looks like modern humans outcompeted the Neanderthals. We're just too quick, too smart, and too tough. The corny history of maize. One of the world's most important crops, corn or maize, became a domestic crop sometime around 9,000 years ago. Author Michael Pollan said there is every reason to believe that corn has succeeded in domesticating us. We would go where the corn was and stay there. Ancient societies in what is now southwestern Mexico began selectively breeding teosinte, a wild grass with a tough, fibrous casing and very few kernels. Not the delicious yellow corn we think of today, but after thousands of years, teosinte evolved into one of the earliest, most reliable crops. When the Europeans arrived to the Americas, they quickly learned how important it was, and they spread it all over the world. While now everyone probably thinks that corn is boring since it is so common, there are actually things about it that we still don't understand. In an effort to get to the bottom of things, a team of Smithsonian researchers conducted a study using DNA from 5,000-year-old maize cobs from a cave in Mexico, and they discovered that it was still in the domestication process. It didn't just start in Mexico and then spread, but was domesticated in several places, creating a mismatch of evolutionary history. The study concluded that people traveled southward from Mexico to Central and South America with partially domesticated corn, and that they domesticated it at the same time in different areas and at different speeds. Then people traveled back north and reintroduced corn to Mexico, where more productive hybrid versions were bred. There are admittedly still gaps in corn's history, but the reason it's so important is that us humans grow more corn than any other plant on the planet. If anything were to happen to our corn crops, we would be in really big trouble. So it is important to understand where corn came from and how it can adapt to changes in its environment. You might not care about corn now, but you would if something happened to it. Pompeii Graffiti. Researchers have no doubt that Mount Vesuvius erupted in 79 AD, burying nearby towns like Pompeii and Herculaneum in ash, but they have long debated what time of year the disaster occurred. In 2018, archaeologists discovered ancient graffiti on the wall of a house that was being renovated during that year, potentially shedding light on this unanswered question. Ancient texts written by Pliny the Elder suggest that Mount Vesuvius erupted on or around August 24th, but the people who made copies of these letters may have mistaken the date, because mounting evidence in recent years suggests that the catastrophe happened during the fall, after crops were harvested, and amid wind conditions that were characteristic of that time of year. Written in Latin, the graffiti describes an individual who overate and was scribbled on a partially finished wall in charcoal. It was found among artifacts that date back to the fall, including a coin that was minted in September or later in 79 AD. Moreover, the graffiti wouldn't have lasted long in a normal environment, putting the eruption's likely date at sometime in October. Knowing exactly when Mount Vesuvius erupted can provide important historical information, helping experts better understand things like the seasonal spread of disease. Just a 2-month discrepancy could make a major difference in accurately tracking disease patterns, making it more important than it may seem to know exactly when the event occurred. Thanks to whoever scrawled a seemingly annoyed message on the wall while working on the house, experts are one step closer to confirming the actual date, or at least month, of Vesuvius's eruption. Strange skeleton. While excavating at the site of a planned development in Hertfordshire, UK, archaeologists discovered a skeleton with outstretched legs leaning against the side of a 6.5-foot deep pit. Its unusual positioning was unique among hundreds of Bronze Age and Roman human remains that were found among the town's 2 digs. For centuries, the site was considered sacred, according to project manager Louise Moen of Oxford Archaeology East, who spoke with the BBC. Determining the strange skeleton's age will be the first step to understanding how and why it ended up in its resting place. Could he have fallen in, or was he put there and the pit was backfilled? Or was he considered some reason deviant and they deliberately left him like that, Moen wondered. Another surprising aspect of the excavations is the sheer volume of Roman artifacts that turned up, which is unusual for the area. Nearly 1,000 objects dating back between the 1st and 4th centuries, including coins, pottery fragments, brooches, needles, and knives were uncovered. For now, archaeologists will have to keep digging and analyzing in an effort to get to the bottom of these unanswered questions. Don't worry, I'll keep you posted. Lizard with a built-in float. According to a new study by an international team of Chinese and Canadian scientists, a recently discovered Triassic predator dubbed Brevicaudosaurus jiangxinensis had a short, flat tail that acted as a built-in float. As part of their research, the scientists examined 2 skeletons found in limestone quarries in southwestern China. The larger of the pair, who lurked in the world's oceans around 240 million years ago, measured just under 2 feet long. They were identified as a previously unknown species of nothosaur, a type of ancient marine reptile with a long neck, fangs, and flipper-like appendages. Unlike other nothosaurs, the duo had short and flat tails. Based on their appearance, researchers believe they were slow but stable swimmers who saved precious energy by floating motionlessly through shallow waters, perhaps in search of prey along the seabed. Equipped with large lungs, the creatures were able to dive for long periods without surfacing, and their ears were well suited for hearing underwater. However ideal their bodies were for their environment, they themselves also had to watch out for predators. Headless Buddha. During recent renovations of an apartment complex in the city of Chongqing in southwestern China, workers discovered a 30-foot-tall religious statue hidden behind a thick wall of foliage. The moss-covered sculpture went viral on Chinese social media overnight after going undetected for quite some time, quickly earning a reputation as the Buddha. It's believed that the nearly forgotten statue was built between 1912 and 1949, during China's Republican era, and that it was destroyed in the 1950s, some 30 years before the surrounding apartment buildings were constructed. And contrary to its nickname, it is not of Buddhist origin, but came from a folk religion, according to experts. The district government told local media that a Taoist temple dedicated to the god of thunder once stood near the statue, but that it was dismantled in 1987. Believe it or not, the headless sculpture is actually a designated cultural relic, despite falling into relative obscurity. Chongqing is rapidly expanding, with countless structures being built in recent decades to accommodate the burgeoning population of 30 million people. Discoveries like this statue, which became concealed shockingly quickly, point toward the presence of other forgotten artifacts and ruins nearby, which perhaps fell out of view amid fast-paced urban expansion. Alien artifacts in Mexico. In 1999, an alleged former Mexican military doctor turned explorer named Dr. Pablo Enrique Garcia Sanchez camped in the high desert of the state of Jalisco, a sparsely populated region he had traveled to escape the stress of daily life. During the trip, he supposedly found a stone of seemingly extraterrestrial origin. Weighing just a few pounds, it contained strange markings that, to Garcia, appeared at first to be Mayan. But the location was far from the heartland of the Maya civilization, leading him to speculate that perhaps it was left by the Aztecs. This theory made slightly more sense since Aztec trading routes were known to travel through the area. When Garcia showed the objects to locals in the nearby town of Ojuelos, they reportedly told him that farmers and ranchers had been finding similar alien artifacts for over 80 years. Residents spoke of an alleged lost city and a plethora of items that were found in a cave near Garcia's campsite, including a carving of an alien-like skull. These tales intrigued him to do some more exploring. Garcia's research group, Naui Oyin, claims to have found over 400 artifacts throughout the region depicting things like aliens in spacesuits and UFOs. Most are made from stone, while some are made from a high-fired clay substance, according to Mexico Unexplained. The items are highly controversial not only because of their bizarre nature, but because many skeptics challenge their authenticity. Naui Oyin does not employ any formally trained experts, and many suspect that Garcia's mission is more about making money than preserving objects of historical value. What do you think about these bizarre alien artifacts of Ojuelos? Real? Or just for tourists? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. We'd love to have you! Prehistoric baboon skull. The whole world admires the ancient Egyptians, but where did they come from? According to legend, the Egyptians spoke of their seemingly mythical place of origin called the land of Punt. It was a thriving settlement abundant with valuable commodities like gold, frankincense, and myrrh. But unlike some other ancient cities lost to stories or the imagination, archaeologists firmly believe that the land of Punt actually existed, but they are not sure where it was located. According to hieroglyphic records, the ancient Egyptians traveled to Punt for over 1,000 years, starting around 4,500 years ago, yet very little evidence exists of the goods they brought back from there. However, a 3,300-year-old baboon skull found stashed in the archives at the British Museum may prove to be a major game-changer. Primatologist Nathaniel Dominy and his colleagues stumbled upon the skull, which belongs to a Hamadryas baboon and was originally discovered in the ancient city of Thebes during the 19th century. By studying the animal's tooth enamel, the team determined that it was born in an area encompassing modern-day Eritrea, Ethiopia, and northwest Somalia. The finding adds to existing theories about Punt being located within that region, quite possibly making the ape the latest in just a handful of objects thought to derive from Punt. While researchers have a long way to go in definitively determining where Punt was located, this discovery has just brought them one step closer. Stolen coins. A recent joint investigation between French and Belgian officials procured a massive hoard of 27,400 allegedly stolen Roman coins, jewelry, and artifacts worth an estimated $1 million. They seized the objects, which they believe were illegally excavated in eastern France, from the home of a treasure hunter living with his mother in Belgium, potentially making him one of the biggest looters in archaeological history. The man, known only as Patrice T., argued that he excavated the treasures in the Belgian town of Hingelum, where personal metal detector searches are perfectly legal. But his claims are highly suspect, according to authorities, who maintain that the hoard was unlawfully unearthed in France, where metal detector use is only allowed for scientific purposes, and any major findings must be reported. In what appears to be an elaborate scheme to circumvent strict French regulations, the suspect fell under suspicion in late 2019, when he contacted Belgian authorities to claim the discovery of over 14,000 Roman coins in an apple orchard he had recently purchased. Officials determined that it was next to impossible for the man to find tens of thousands of artifacts in the area he claims they came from, where no more than a handful of objects could realistically turn up. Patrice T. faces possible prison time and hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines. So, was it worth it? Message in a bottle. A Boston, Massachusetts resident recently found a folded handwritten message inside an old rye whiskey bottle hidden between their fireplace and wall, and its meaning is a lingering mystery. The bottle's label appears to be from a nearby former alcohol distributor. According to the Boston Globe, the note inside bears the name Tom Ford. It is dated to September 23, 1894, and contains the cryptic message, "Six on Shay." What does that mean? Officials from the City of Boston Archaeology Program sought the public's help in identifying the note's meaning. Several responses speculated that it had something to do with gambling, perhaps betting on a horse race, a ball game, or boxing. Other social media users guessed that the meaning behind the message was less deviant, perhaps alluding to the man's address. Whatever the case may be, it remains unsolved for now. What do you think "Six on Shay" means? Let me know in the comments below. Who knows? You might actually have it right. The Lady of Baza. In 1971, a worker struck something hard while excavating Serra del Santuario, a pre-Roman settlement in southern Spain, near the modern-day city of Baza. It was a 4-foot-tall funerary statue of a woman dating back nearly 2,500 years. The limestone sculpture, known as the Lady of Baza, depicts an elaborately dressed woman sitting on a throne and contains traces of the vibrant pigments that it was once painted with. Inside, archaeologists found cremated human remains dating back to around 380 BC. The Lady of Baza is similar to other sculptures from the Bronze Age Iberian culture, which is shrouded in mystery. But she may provide researchers with intriguing clues to her identity and what Iberian society was like, according to Benjamin Collado for National Geographic. Dating back to roughly 1000 BC, the Iberian culture emerged from the previous Argar society. Made up of skilled metal workers, the civilization became wealthy by trading with Eastern Mediterranean peoples. The Iberian language is largely undeciphered, leaving experts to rely mainly on archaeological artifacts for clues about the ancient culture. Found in what was once an Iberian capital, the Lady of Baza was likely an aristocratic woman. She was found surrounded by grave offerings, including ceramic pots and metal weapons, indicating her high social standing. Carved from a single stone block, the sculpture bears traces of influence from Greek and Phoenician cultures. This makes sense considering the Iberians' dependency on the newly created Phoenician capital and trading center of Carthage at the time the statue was created. The Iberian culture ultimately disappeared at the hands of the Romans, leaving limited surviving evidence behind. Rare discoveries like the Lady of Baza are critical in improving our understanding of the society. Mammal among dinosaurs. Around 66 million years ago on the supercontinent of Gondwana, which encompassed modern-day Africa, South America, Australia, Antarctica, the Indian subcontinent, and the Arabian Peninsula, a strange mammal roamed alongside the dinosaurs. A newly published study in the Journal of Vertebrate Paleontology describes the bizarre creature named Adalatherium, which translates to crazy beast. For over 20 years, researchers studied the shockingly intact remains of the creature, which qualify as the most complete mammal from before the extinction of the dinosaurs ever found in the southern hemisphere. The possum-sized crazy beast was much larger than most mammals at the time, who were generally the size of shrews and mice. It had strong hind limbs similar to modern-day crocodiles, rabbit-like front teeth, more trunk vertebrae than most mammals, and back teeth unlike any known living or extinct mammal. The animal lived between 145 and 66 million years ago on Madagascar, which was already an island by then, perhaps owing to its unique anatomy. It belongs to the extinct Gondwanatheria group of mammals, which had a widespread presence throughout Gondwana. Scientists have found limited remains of these creatures, and their placement in the animal family tree has long been a mystery. Despite the extensive study, experts also remain baffled about how the crazy beast evolved. While their reconstruction of it resembles a modern-day badger at first glance, it's unclear how the animal moved, with its sprawling back legs and tucked-in front legs. Its teeth also pose more questions than answers, with the creature's back chompers being so unordinary that if they had been found on their own, scientists undoubtedly would have been unable to identify what the animal was. There is also a hole between the bones at the top of its snout, which remains unexplained. This fascinating analysis proves that the scientific community has a lot more to learn about how early mammals evolved throughout the southern hemisphere. Mystery Woman. When Irish camera collector William Fagan purchased a vintage Leica camera in 2015, he found an undeveloped roll of film inside. He finally got around to developing what he could of it, resulting in 22 photos featuring a beautiful young woman posing on a deserted street in northern Italy in a mid-1930s BMW cabriolet in Switzerland, beside a lake somewhere, and then a handful of other pretty scenes and European destinations. She appeared to be traveling with an older, less photographed gentleman. Fagan, who said in a CNN interview that he almost felt like he was intruding on someone's personal life by seeing the photos, ironically made them public in an effort to find out who they belonged to. He believes the images date back to the 1950s, meaning the people in them could still be alive. Some people speculate that the couple in the photos may have been famous, while others think they may be long-lost relatives. Fagan hopes to get one step closer to solving the mystery by contacting BMW owner clubs with the license plate information. Meanwhile, he welcomes all the help he can get from the public. The photographer refers to what he's doing as photographic archaeology, and he has a passion for the practice. That's cool, right? You could probably be a photographic archaeologist. With any luck, hopefully he will reunite someone with some long-lost memories that were captured on film and only recently rediscovered. Parthian Tomb. In October 2020, officials announced the discovery of a 1,000-year-old tomb in Iran's Kurdistan province. Inside the tomb was a human skeleton with a spearhead beneath its ribs. But perhaps the most unique thing about it is that it is inside a giant clay jar. The remains are thought to date back to sometime between 247 BC and 224 AD during the Parthian era. They appear to belong to a warrior who died from their injuries, as evidenced by the spearhead that probably got stuck inside when they died. Project leader Shoku Khosravi explained that in the Parthian burial tradition, giant jars usually played the role of coffins, and in the discovered tomb, according to the Parthian culture, the body was placed inside 2 earthen jars. Also known as the Arsacid Empire, the Parthian Empire was a major political and cultural power, extending from what is now northeastern Turkey to eastern Iran at its peak. The powerful civilization's religious beliefs, art, architecture, and other customs contained elements of Hellenistic and Persian cultures. The unique grave is actually one of several Parthian burials discovered throughout the country in recent years. In a sad turn of events, grave-digging machinery in a northern Iranian village in May 2020 was making room for deceased COVID-19 victims when they uncovered an ancient grave. It contained ancient skeleton fragments and a host of artifacts dating back to the Parthian era, including a sword, dagger, quiver, and arrows. Ancient counterfeit currency. Around 1200 BC, during a time period known as the Late Bronze Age collapse, and several years before coin currency was invented, silver hoards were infused with cheaper copper alloys and coated with an authentic-looking layer of silver. In analyzing 35 silver hoards found throughout Israel, archaeologist Sila Eshel found that 8 were debased in this manner. This early counterfeit currency came when kingdoms throughout the region, then known as Canaan, often met violent ends. At the time, Egypt ruled the area, leading researchers to believe that Egyptian rulers were originally behind the dirty money, perhaps to falsely bolster the quantity of their silver stores. Moreover, the stashes were imported because Canaan had no silver sources. Sometime between 1200 BC and 1150 BC, the silver trade abruptly ended. This coincided with the downfall of late Bronze Age kingdoms, and a shortage of the precious metal may have played a role in the trade's collapse. The main takeaway from the study? In the words of Eshel, counterfeiting continued after the Egyptians left Canaan, but they were probably the ones who initiated it. A constipated demise. A new study details the painful demise of a mummified man who died sometime between 1,000 and 1,400 years ago after eating mostly grasshoppers for months. Found in the lower Pecos Canyon lands of Texas, the man had a condition called megacolon, when a person's colon swells up to 6 times its normal size. He suffered from Chagas disease, which prevented him from properly digesting food and led to malnourishment. Chagas is passed on by parasites. During the final 2 to 3 months of his life, he was likely unable to eat or walk on his own, and it appears as though his caretakers fed him grasshoppers with the legs removed, the squishable part of the insects, in the words of University of Nebraska-Lincoln professor Carl Reinhardt. In addition to being high in protein, it was pretty high in moisture, Reinhardt explained in a statement about the research, so it would have been easier for him to eat in the early stages of his megacolon experience. All of this means that someone was taking care of him, and researchers are calling this an early example of hospice care. The findings are the latest of numerous studies on the mummified man since his remains were discovered in 1937 in a rock shelter. More recent research found that his body contained food remains that he was unable to digest, as well as 2.6 pounds of feces, meaning that he was extremely constipated for months. The detailed results of the study will be published in spring 2021 in an upcoming book called The Handbook of Mummy Studies. If you want more info, be sure to check it out. Nazi Enigma Machine. Divers removing fishing nets from the Baltic Sea in northeastern Germany's Bay of Gelting for the World Wildlife Fund recently found a Nazi code-making machine called an Enigma Machine. At first glance, the diver who discovered the device thought it was a typewriter because that's pretty much what it looks like. Soon enough, however, the team realized that they had found something stranger. To keep Allied forces from learning about their plans during World War II, the German military used the Enigma machine to send coded messages. The keys did not actually correspond with the letter on them. Instead, they used anywhere between 3 to 8 rotors to type out a series of different letters and symbols for any one key. Enigma machines with 3 rotors were used for German warships. Those with 8 were for U-boats, which were responsible for sinking thousands of Allied ships throughout the war. The device that was recently discovered is the type that was used on warships. It's possible that the Nazis threw it overboard toward the war's end in a last-ditch attempt to keep the Allies from accessing it, according to John Vaught, a German Naval Association historian who spoke with the DPA news agency. Archaeologists are restoring the Enigma machine at a museum in the state of Schleswig-Holstein. Once they're finished, probably in about a year, it will go on display for all to see. Human bone weapons. What do you make weapons out of when you don't have metal, stone, and bones? Mesolithic hunter-gatherers who once lived in Doggerland carved weapons from human bone, because why not? Doggerland is now underwater in the North Sea, but it was once a land bridge between mainland Europe and the UK. As the region was gradually flooded by rising sea levels around 6,000 years ago, the nomadic people who lived and traveled through Doggerland left behind numerous artifacts that still occasionally turn up today. The recently published research analyzed 10 bone weapons originating from Doggerland. 8 of the artifacts, known as barbed points, were crafted from the bones of red deer, while 2 were made from human bones. Even the experts themselves were shocked by this discovery. We expected to find some deer, but humans? It wasn't even in my wildest dreams that there would be humans among them, lead researcher Joanne Decker told Life Science. It's a mystery why the prehistoric people of Doggerland chose to create weapons from human bones, which were harder to find and a less ideal material than deer antler. The barbed points were likely carved shortly after someone's death, according to Decker, because it would have been much easier than working with dry bone. There were probably cultural rules on what species to use for barbed points, Decker explained, adding, "We think it was a conscious choice that had to do with the connotations and associations that people had with those deceased people as symbols." The barbed points were radiocarbon dated between 11,000 and 8,000 years ago. Knowledge is limited on how common it was for the Middle Stone Age people who lived in the area to craft weapons from human bones, but Decker's discovery provides a first step toward learning more about this practice. Baby in a jar. Archaeologists working in the ancient city of Jaffa in what is now Israel recently unearthed a jar containing the 3,800-year-old remains of a baby. Burials like these are not necessarily rare and have occurred over numerous time periods dating as far back as the Bronze Age and as recent as less than 100 years ago, according to Israel Antiquities Authority archaeologist Yoav Arbel, who was part of the team that made the discovery. But experts have yet to figure out the reasoning behind these burials. Arbel told Life Science, "You might go to the practical thing and say that the bodies were so fragile, maybe they felt the need to protect it from the environment, even though it is dead. But there is always the interpretation that the jar is almost like a womb, so basically the idea is to return the baby back into Mother Earth, or into the symbolic protection of his mother." Jaffa makes up the older part of Israel's second most populated city, Tel Aviv. According to Arbel, it's been continuously occupied since 900 BC, making it one of the world's earliest port cities. Paid to go away. After backing an unsuccessful candidate for emperor, residents of the Roman city Nicopolis ad Istrum, on the losing side, paid a hefty donation to the victor. This is according to a 2nd century Greek inscription on a limestone slab that archaeologists found while excavating the site in the early 20th century. The city, located in what is now Bulgaria, promptly sent 700,000 gold coins to Emperor Septimus Severus upon his victory. He gladly accepted the gift and responded with a letter that the town's grateful people turned into a 10-foot-tall, 3-foot-wide, 2-ton stone monument. Researchers recently restored the broken artifact. Nikolai Sherenkov, an assistant professor at Sofia University in Bulgaria, provided an updated translation of the inscription. In their letter to the people of Nicopolis ad Istrum, which is one of the few to survive the era, Severus and his son Caracalla told them that they accept their cash contribution. The letter also states that the people had taken the right side. Experts believe that the city gave this payment to Severus to prove to him that its people were trustworthy after they backed a losing candidate for emperor. The inscription backs up this idea, stating, "You have shown thereby that you are men of goodwill and loyalty and are anxious to have the better standing in our judgment of you." But the money exchange between Nicopolis ad Istrum and Severus to get in the emperor's good graces is not the only shady thing that went on at the time. In his letter to the city, Severus falsely claimed to descend from Marcus Aurelius, presumably to bolster his perceived credentials, but the man's ancestors were actually from Africa in what is now Libya and were not related to Marcus Aurelius. So, as much as the donation benefited Nicopolis ad Istrum, Severus also wrote it for his own gain by using it as an opportunity to legitimize his role as emperor. Win-win. Gardening treasure. While weeding their garden in Hampshire in southeastern England in late 2020, a family found a buried stash of 15th century gold coins featuring English monarchs. Altogether, the hoard contained 63 coins and 1 silver coin, which were minted over a roughly century-long span. They depict several kings, including Edward IV and Henry VIII. The coins of Henry VIII also contain the initials of any one of 3 of his wives, Catherine of Aragon, Anne Boleyn, or Jane Seymour. The reason for putting their initials on the coins is unknown, but the initials changed fairly frequently considering Henry VIII's many marriages. Another mystery surrounding the coins is why someone decided to bury them around 1540. In fact, nobody even knows if the person who buried the coins repeatedly visited the site to add to the stash, or if they only went there once. But they were definitely wealthy, as the hoard has an estimated modern-day value of $18,600. That's much more than the average wage in Tudor times. The family who discovered the coins promptly contacted the British Museum, which has been kept quite busy amid the coronavirus pandemic as backyard discoveries have greatly increased. The museum's Portable Antiquities Scheme, or PAS, works with people who discover artifacts throughout the UK to ensure that the items are studied and documented. As much as at-home archaeological discoveries are on the rise during life in lockdown, this find is particularly special. A gold hoard this big or from this particular time is rare indeed. Germ-covered art. Leonardo da Vinci is known as one of the greatest artists of all time. A new study of 7 of his iconic drawings revealed that each piece of artwork harbors a unique collection of microbes. In fact, after making their initial findings, researchers were able to identify specific paintings based on this information alone. As unique as they were, the microbiomes among the paintings that were examined had enough in common for experts to sniff out counterfeit artwork or pieces that were stored differently. Da Vinci's drawings were found to contain a lot of human and insect DNA, fungi, and microbes that cause paper to decay. Most surprising to the researchers was that the drawings contained a higher concentration of bacteria than fungi, while most drawings and other paper works of art tend to contain more fungi than bacteria. This is likely from the high number of people handling the drawings over the centuries and flies defecating on them. Simply put, many of the people, creatures, and environmental factors that came into contact with the artwork left an invisible trail on it. By studying the microscopic life forms that cover paper objects, researchers can potentially develop new ways to detect forgeries and learn more about a piece of artwork's history. There are possibly limits to how much these microbes can teach us, however. Although researchers believe the DNA dates back to restorers who handled the drawings during the 15th century, it is unclear how far back in time the microbiomes are left behind from. Scientists have yet to examine the DNA in detail, but those pieces of art are slowly beginning to talk. Ancient Egyptian star constellations. Experts in Germany and Egypt who recently restored a 2,000-year-old Egyptian temple, called the Temple of Esna, found mentionings of previously unknown constellations and revealed the vibrant colors that the ancient structure was originally painted in before being covered in dirt and soot. "It looks like it was painted yesterday," project leader Christian Leitz told Live Science. The restorers carefully cleaned the temple using alcohol and distilled water, revealing the detailed carvings depicting constellations such as the Big Dipper and Orion. They also found inscriptions referencing Apedu and Ra, or the geese of Ra, the Egyptian sun god. The constellations mentioned in the inscription were not drawn out, however, leaving experts to wonder what stars in the sky they refer to. The surviving vestibule at the Temple of Esna is all that's left of the several temples that once existed there. After being used to store cotton during the second half of the 19th century, it was left neglected and filthy. It was only recently that the intricate artwork hidden beneath the layers of grime and bird droppings was again revealed. Thanks for watching! Hope you learned something new today. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you soon. Bye!